My entitled husband abandons me and our child. After pressuring me to have kids, then expected me to care for him when he got sick. The day my husband and I got married, he started pressuring me to become a mother. He knew I never wanted kids, and though he initially said he was okay with this, the day he got back from our honeymoon, it's like he flipped a switch. He started telling me he'd never be happy with a woman who refused her natural instincts. I had just lost my baby nephew less than 3 months ago, and I think he used my grief to convince me that having my own little kid would bring back some of the joy that my nephew gave me. And because of that, and because of how much I loved him too, I gave in and agreed to have one child. He was overjoyed at first. During the start of the pregnancy, he was smiling ear to ear, telling me my motherly instincts would kick in, and in a few years I'd be happy he pressured me so much. But then 4 months in, something happened. We were told that our son would come out with Down syndrome. I gasped, and when I looked over, I saw my husband staring intently. That night, I tried to convince him to terminate it. I had barely agreed to raise a neurotypical child. I couldn't handle a kid with Down syndrome. I was not that strong. But my husband refused to budge. He said kids with Down syndrome are a blessing, and if I was willing to throw away our son because of a minor disability, I wasn't a person he was proud to call his wife. Those words stung. They stung so much I agreed to give birth. Throughout the rest of the pregnancy, he assured me he would be there for me and our kid the whole time. He promised to pick up extra shifts, attend classes, take courses, all the works. And for the first year or so, he did. He was really the perfect father, changing diapers, babysitting, cooking for the 3 of us. I thought maybe we could make it work. But then time went on, and our son showed slower signs of mental development to other kids. That's when my husband started slowly drifting. At first, it was small stuff. He'd skip a therapy session here and there, blaming work stress. I gave him the benefit of the doubt because I knew Danny's care could be exhausting. Still, each absence stung because deep down, I felt he'd pressured me into something neither of us was truly ready for. Soon, those absences piled up. One missed therapy session turned into 2 or 3, then eventually he stopped coming altogether. The weight of Danny's daily routine, appointments, therapies, special education fell entirely onto me. My husband grew distant, staying late at work, leaving me alone to juggle everything. At first, I resented it. I'd never signed up for this, yet here I was, handling it all alone. Then came the night that shattered any illusions I had left. Danny was 4 years old, and we were practicing some basic words when suddenly, he started violently shaking and fell backward onto the carpet. His eyes rolled back, his body stiffening in seizure. I called my husband repeatedly, panicking. No answer. Frantic, I rushed Danny to the ER, clutching his tiny hand, terrified I'd lose him. My husband showed up hours later, annoyed at the inconvenience. Watching him stand there coldly, I realized clearly how alone Danny and I were. I felt betrayed. I'd never wanted any of this, yet I had stepped up while the one who made all the promises abandoned us. Things only worsened after that night. My husband stopped pretending entirely. He'd silently watch TV, disconnected from Danny's life. I was the one comforting Danny through nightmares, struggling alongside him in speech therapy, quietly proud when he learned a new word or skill. Despite never imagining myself as a mom, I found myself becoming fiercely protective of my son. Danny and I bonded deeply, almost defiantly, through our shared isolation. The breaking point came at Danny's kindergarten graduation. My husband hadn't attended any meetings or therapy sessions in years, but there he stood on stage, smiling broadly, telling our friends and family how proud he was. People praised him, patting his back, congratulating his supposed dedication. Meanwhile, I sat stunned, holding Danny's small hand tightly. Later that night, I heard quiet crying from Danny's room. He looked up at me, eyes red, and whispered, "Dad doesn't care." My heart shattered. Holding him close, I realized how fiercely I loved this little boy I once didn't want, and I knew we couldn't continue living like this. 2 months later, during another serious health scare, my husband finally said what he'd been hiding. Sitting by Danny's hospital bed, he bluntly admitted he never accepted Danny's condition and couldn't keep pretending. That night, he packed and left, leaving Danny and me alone. It hurt deeply, but strangely, it felt like a relief. 3 years passed. Danny grew happier, healthier, and more confident. Then unexpectedly, I got a call late one evening. My ex had been badly injured in a car accident, temporarily unable to care for himself. He asked me if he could move back in with me for a while, just until he got back on his feet. Danny was in the living room working on a puzzle, completely absorbed in matching the colorful pieces. He'd grown so much. His speech therapy was going wonderfully, and just last week his teacher said he was making friends at school. We had our routine down perfectly. Morning exercises, breakfast, school, therapy twice a week, swimming on Saturdays. Everything ran like clockwork. How long? I finally asked my husband. Just a few weeks, maybe a month, until I can walk properly again. I closed my eyes. The logical part of me screamed to say no, but another part, maybe the part that remembered the man I'd once loved, or maybe just basic human decency, made me hesitate. Fine, I heard myself saying, but there are rules. This is Danny's home first and foremost. You don't disrupt his routine. You don't interfere with his care. And the moment you can manage on your own, you leave. Of course. Thank you. I'll have my brother drop me off tomorrow afternoon. After hanging up, I immediately started preparing. I moved things around in the guest room, clearing a path for potential crutches or a wheelchair. I made a list of Danny's upcoming appointments and therapy sessions, determined to keep everything on track. I even called Danny's therapist to give her a heads up about the temporary change in our household. The next day, I prepared Danny as best I could. We sat at his favorite spot by the window where he liked to watch the birds. "Danny, remember Dad?" He nodded slowly, his expression uncertain. "He got hurt and needs a place to stay for a little while. He's going to sleep in the guest room." Danny's face scrunched up. "Like a sleepover?" "Kind of, but longer. Just until he feels better." Danny went back to watching the birds, processing this information in his own time. I rubbed his back gently, hoping I wasn't making a terrible mistake. When the doorbell rang that afternoon, Danny hid behind me as I opened the door. My ex-husband stood there supported by his brother, his left leg in a cast, his right arm in a sling, bruises visible on his face. He looked genuinely rough. "Thanks again," he said as his brother helped him inside. I showed them to the guest room while Danny watched from the hallway. After his brother left, I helped my ex get settled, bringing him water and making sure he could reach everything he needed from the bed. "The bathroom's right across the hall," I explained. "I put a shower chair in there. Danny has therapy at 4 today, so we'll be gone for about 2 hours." "Danny's still in therapy?" he asked, and something in his tone made me stiffen. "Yes, and he's doing amazingly well. His speech has improved dramatically." He nodded but said nothing more. That first week went surprisingly smoothly. My ex mostly stayed in his room, hobbling to the bathroom on crutches and joining us for meals. Danny remained wary but polite, gradually adjusting to the presence of this semi-stranger in our our home. I kept our routine intact, and life continued almost normally. But then things started shifting. It began small. On Monday of the second week, just as I was getting Danny ready for his speech therapy appointment, my ex called out from his room. "I'm having terrible pain. I think I need to go to the emergency room." I rushed in to find him grimacing, clutching his ribs. "What happened?" "I don't know. I tried to reach for something and felt this sharp pain. I can barely breathe." I looked at Danny, already in his jacket, therapy bag in hand. His appointment was in 30 minutes, and we'd waited 2 months to get this slot with his favorite therapist. "Can you call an Uber?" I suggested. "Or your brother? I can't manage alone like this. Please, what if something's seriously wrong?" Danny tugged at my sleeve. "Therapy?" My heart sank. I called the therapist to cancel, the receptionist's voice sympathetic but firm when she said the next available appointment wasn't for 3 weeks. At the hospital, after 3 hours of waiting and tests, the doctor found nothing wrong. "Probably just muscle strain from compensating for your other injuries," she said. My ex seemed remarkably better by the time we got home, even managing to make himself a sandwich while I helped Danny with his exercises, trying to make up for the missed therapy session. 2 days later, it happened again. This time I was about to leave for Danny's parent-teacher conference when my ex had a fall in the bathroom. The loud crash sent Danny into a panic, and by the time I calmed him down and helped my ex back to bed, I'd missed the meeting entirely. His teacher's email that night was polite but concerned about my absence. I started noticing patterns. My ex's worst moments always seemed to coincide with Danny's important appointments or activities. When I mentioned this, he acted hurt. "You think I'm timing my pain? That's cruel, even for you." The guilt hit immediately. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe the stress was getting to me. But then I'd catch him moving around just fine when he thought I wasn't looking, reaching high shelves without wincing, putting weight on his supposedly injured leg. Danny began showing signs of stress too. He'd started having trouble sleeping again, something we'd worked so hard to overcome. One night, I found him sitting in his closet with his favorite stuffed elephant. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" "Dad says I make you tired," he whispered. My blood ran cold. "When did Dad say that?" "When you were cooking. He said I'm a lot of work." I held Danny close, fury burning in my chest. The next morning, I confronted my ex. "Don't you dare tell Danny he's too much work." He looked confused, innocent. "I never said that. Maybe he misunderstood. You know how he processes things differently. Gaslighting." I recognized it now, but what could I do? Kick out an injured man? How would that look? As the days passed, my ex grew bolder. He'd question my parenting decisions in front of Danny, subtle digs disguised as concern. "Are you sure he needs all that therapy? Maybe you're pushing him too hard." Or, "Don't you think you're babying him? He needs to learn independence." Danny's confidence, built up over 3 years of consistent support, began to crack. He stopped trying new words, stopped raising his hand at school. His teacher called, worried about his regression. I was exhausted, juggling Danny's needs, household management, and my ex's manufactured crises. Friends stopped calling after I canceled plans repeatedly. My sister texted less after I missed our weekly video chats. I felt increasingly isolated, exactly how I'd felt during my marriage. One evening while making dinner, I overheard my ex on the phone in his room. I froze, straining to hear. "Definitely struggling. You should see how frazzled she is. Can barely keep up with the boys' basic needs. Yeah, I've been documenting everything. Custody shouldn't be hard to get at this point." My hands shook as I gripped the counter. He was building a case against me, using the chaos he was creating as evidence of my incompetence. That night, after Danny was asleep, I started my own documentation. I bought a small notebook and began recording everything. Every missed appointment due to his emergencies, every negative comment about Danny, every time I caught him exaggerating his injuries. I also started leaving my phone recording in my pocket during his interactions with Danny. Most were benign, but occasionally I'd capture something telling, like when he told Danny that mommy would be happier if she didn't have to take care of you all the time, or when he suggested Danny was too slow to understand things. The situation escalated 3 weeks into his stay. I'd started standing my ground, refusing to miss Danny's appointments for non-emergency situations. My ex's accidents became more dramatic in response. One morning, he cornered me in the kitchen while Danny was getting dressed. "You've changed," he said. "You used to be more caring." "I'm plenty caring. I'm letting you stay here, aren't I?" "Barely. You act like I'm some burden." "What happened to the woman I married?" "She became a mother," I said firmly. "Danny comes first. Always." His face darkened. "You never wanted him. Don't pretend you're some saint now." "You're right. I didn't want kids. But I love Danny more than anything in this world. You're the one who pushed for this and then abandoned us." "I didn't abandon anyone. I left an impossible situation. You have no idea how hard it was watching my son be so limited." The word hung in the air like poison. Before I could respond, Danny appeared in the doorway, his face crumbling. He'd heard everything. I rushed to him, but he pulled away, running to his room. It took hours to calm him down, to convince him he wasn't limited, that both his parents loved him. My ex never apologized, claiming I'd taken his words out of context. That's when I started planning. I played along, pretending to soften toward my ex, even apologizing for being too harsh. He bought it completely, his guard dropping. He started leaving his phone unlocked, having louder conversations with his family about his plans. I learned he'd been talking to a lawyer about custody, painting a picture of an overwhelmed, unstable mother. His family believed every word, especially his mother, who'd always thought I was cold for not wanting children initially. The breaking point came on a Thursday night. I was giving Danny his evening medications when my ex offered to help. "Let me do it. You look tired." Something in his eagerness made me hesitate, but I wanted to see what he'd do. I pretended to go to the bathroom but watched from the hallway. I saw him switch Danny's pills, replacing them with something else from his pocket. I intervened immediately, my heart pounding. "What did you just do?" "Nothing. Just giving him his meds like you asked." I grabbed the pills from Danny's hand before he could take them. They looked similar but weren't quite right. I recognized them as my ex's pain medication, a much stronger dose than anything safe for a child. "Danny, go to your room and play. Now." Once he was gone, I confronted my ex, who denied everything, but I'd seen it clearly. That night, I locked Danny's door from the inside and we slept together, my phone ready to call 911. The next morning, I called his brother. "You need to pick him up today. He can't manage alone yet, then he'll have to figure it out. He's leaving today." When my ex protested, I stayed calm. "I know what you tried to do with Danny's medication. I have security footage from the nanny cam in the kitchen. Leave now, or I call the police." It was a bluff about the footage, but he didn't know that. His brother arrived within an hour, shooting me disapproving looks as he helped pack. My ex tried one last manipulation. "You're going to regret this. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of mother you really are." "Go ahead," I said. "I have 3 weeks of documentation. Every fake emergency, every cruel word to Danny, every attempt to sabotage his progress. Yes, try me. He left without another word. The house felt lighter immediately. Danny, sensing the change, began to smile again. Within days, his speech improved. Within 2 weeks, his teacher called to praise his renewed participation. I filed for a restraining order using the documentation I'd gathered, including the medication incident. The judge granted it immediately. My ex's family tried reaching out, but I blocked them all. We didn't need their toxicity in our lives. 3 months later, Danny won an award at school for Most Improved Student. As he stood on that little stage, beaming with pride, holding his certificate, I cried happy tears. We'd survived. More than that, we'd thrived. That night, as I tucked Danny into bed, he looked up at me with those beautiful eyes and said clearly, "I love you, Mommy. We're a good team." The best team, I agreed, kissing his forehead. We never heard from my ex again. Sometimes I wonder if he thinks about us, about what he threw away. But mostly, I don't think about him at all. I'm too busy living this life I never expected to want, being the mother I never thought I could be, loving this incredible boy who teaches me something new every single day. Danny still has challenges. He always will. But he faces them with courage and joy, surrounded by people who truly love and support him. That's all that matters. That's everything. The morning after filing the restraining order, I woke to find an envelope slipped under my front door. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter from my ex's attorney, threatening legal action for false accusations and parental alienation. The carefully worded document made my stomach churn. He was already building his counterattack. Danny came padding into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "Breakfast, Mommy." I quickly tucked the letter away and smiled. "Pancakes sound good?" As I mixed batter, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You made a mistake. He's not giving up on his son." I blocked the number immediately, but throughout breakfast, more messages came through from different numbers, each one more threatening than the last. My ex's family was rallying behind him. That afternoon at Danny's occupational therapy session, I noticed a man in the waiting room who seemed oddly interested in us. When we left, he followed us to the parking lot. I quickly buckled Danny in and drove a circuitous route home, watching my mirrors constantly. The car eventually disappeared, but my nerves were shot. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. Danny's therapy appointments were mysteriously canceled. When I called to confirm, the receptionist said I had called to cancel them myself. I hadn't. Someone was impersonating me, disrupting Danny's care from afar. Then came the social media posts. My ex's sister, Allie, started a campaign on Facebook about fathers' rights and alienated parents. She painted my ex as a devoted father, denied access to his disabled son by a vindictive ex-wife. The posts went viral in our community. People I'd known for years started giving me cold looks at the grocery store. Danny noticed the shift too. "Why did Mrs. Johnson walk away?" he asked after a neighbor deliberately avoided us at the park. "Some people are just having bad days," I lied, my heart breaking. The harassment escalated. Pizza deliveries we didn't order showed up at all hours. Our mailbox was stuffed with religious pamphlets about proper motherhood. Someone called Child Protective Services with an anonymous tip about neglect. The social worker who came to investigate found nothing wrong, but the visit terrified Danny. "Did I do something bad?" he asked, clinging to me after she left. "No, sweetheart, never. You're perfect." I installed security cameras and changed our locks. I documented everything meticulously, building my own case. But the stress was taking its toll. I was jumpy, constantly looking over my shoulder, checking and rechecking doors and windows. 2 weeks after the restraining order, I received a call from Danny's school. The principal's voice was careful, measured. "We've received some concerning information about Danny's home situation. We'd like to schedule a meeting." My blood ran cold. "What kind of information?" "Someone has raised questions about your fitness as a parent. We have to follow up on all concerns." At the meeting, I faced a panel including the principal, Danny's teacher, and the school counselor. They showed me a thick folder of evidence someone had submitted, photos taken from afar showing me looking frazzled, testimony from neighbors about Danny's declining condition, even a statement from a concerned relative about my mental health history. I defended myself fiercely, providing my own documentation of Danny's progress, his medical records showing improvement, and glowing reports from his therapists. The principal seemed satisfied, but the damage was done. I was now under scrutiny. That night, as I tucked Danny in, he asked, "Are they going to take me away?" The question shattered me. Never. I won't let anyone take you away. But even as I said it, I wondered if I could keep that promise. The next phase of harassment was more insidious. My ex had clearly hired a private investigator. I spotted the same car parked near our house, the gym, Danny's school. They were building a case, looking for any mistake, any moment of imperfection to use against me. I became hyper-vigilant. Every word to Danny was measured, every action calculated to appear perfect. The pressure was exhausting. I couldn't relax even in my own home, knowing we were being watched. Then came the financial attack. Suddenly, my credit cards were maxed out with purchases I hadn't made. My bank account was frozen due to suspicious activity. When I tried to pay for Danny's medications, my card was declined. The pharmacist looked at me with pity as Danny asked why we couldn't get his medicine. I had to borrow money from my sister, humiliating as it was. She flew in to help, horrified by what was happening. "This is insane," she said, reviewing the documentation I'd gathered. "He's systematically trying to destroy you." "I know, but what choice do I have? I can't let him near Danny again." She stayed for a week, helping me navigate the financial mess and providing witness statements about my parenting. Her presence was a relief, but she eventually had to return home. The night she left, I found Danny in his room, packing his favorite toys into his backpack. "What are you doing, sweetheart?" "Getting ready," he said matter-of-factly, "for when they make me go away." I held him as we both cried. My little boy, who had already faced so many challenges, was now living in fear because of his father's vendetta. The breaking point came 3 weeks later. I'd just picked Danny up from school when my phone rang. It was my ex's number, which should have been impossible with a restraining order. "Hello, wife." His voice was calm, controlled. "How's our son?" "You can't contact me. I'm hanging up and calling the police." "I wouldn't do that. Check your email." Against my better judgment, I did. There was a video file. I clicked play and gasped. It was footage of Danny at school, taken from inside his classroom. How had he gotten this? "Amazing what a concerned parent volunteer can access," he continued. "I've been watching him all week. He looks tired, stressed. That's what happens when a child is kept from their father." My hands shook. He'd found a way around the restraining order, volunteering under a false name. The school hadn't connected him to Danny. "If you come near him, I'm already near him, every day, and there's nothing you can do about it. Drop the restraining order, or things will get worse." I hung up and immediately called the school, but they were closed. I spent the night awake, terrified, Danny sleeping in my bed as I watched the security cameras obsessively. The next morning, I rushed to the the school, demanding to see the volunteer list. Sure enough, there was a John Smith who'd started volunteering the week before. The principal was mortified when I explained the situation, immediately banning him from campus and implementing new security measures. But the damage was done. Danny had noticed the strange man watching him. His anxiety spiked, and he started having accidents again, something we'd overcome years ago. He was regressing under the stress. I hired a lawyer with money I couldn't afford, determined to fight back. She was appalled by the harassment campaign and immediately filed for an emergency hearing to address the violations. The night before the hearing, I was preparing Danny's dinner when he suddenly collapsed. Not a seizure this time, but complete exhaustion. He'd been so anxious he hadn't been sleeping, even when he appeared to be. At the hospital, the doctor was blunt. This level of stress is dangerous for him. His immune system is compromised. You need to find a way to reduce his anxiety. I wanted to scream. How could I reduce his anxiety when we were under constant attack? As we left the hospital, I noticed a familiar car in the parking garage. My ex's brother Benji was watching us. I hurried Danny to our car, but Benji intercepted us. This has gone too far, he said, but not to me. He was looking at Danny. Your dad just wants to see you. Leave us alone, I said firmly, pushing past him. Danny, don't you miss your dad? Benji called out. Danny buried his face in my shoulder, trembling. I got him in the car and locked the doors, but Benji stood there, still talking, trying to guilt Danny through the window. That night, I made a decision. We couldn't keep living like this. I started researching, looking for options. Moving wasn't ideal with Danny's established care team, but staying was becoming impossible. The court hearing was a disaster. My ex appeared via video call, looking haggard and playing the victim perfectly. He claimed I was poisoning Danny against him, that his volunteering was just a desperate father trying to see his son. His lawyer painted me as unstable, vindictive, using Danny's disability to punish my ex. My lawyer fought back hard, presenting the evidence of harassment, the medication tampering, the systematic campaign to destabilize our lives. But the judge seemed skeptical, especially when my ex's lawyer produced character witnesses who testified about what a devoted father he'd been. The judge didn't drop the restraining order, but he ordered a custody evaluation. A stranger would now assess my parenting, with the power to recommend changes to custody. It was a partial victory for my ex, and he knew it. Leaving court, I felt defeated. Danny sensed my mood and held my hand tighter. We still a good team? He asked quietly. Always, I promised, though I'd never felt less certain. The custody evaluator arrived the following week. Dr. Min was professional but distant, observing our daily routines with clinical detachment. Danny was nervous around her, which made him appear less verbal than usual. Every stumble felt magnified under her watchful eye. She interviewed me extensively about my initial reluctance to have children, my ex's departure, and the current situation. I was honest, perhaps too honest, about my journey to motherhood. She took notes without expression, giving nothing away. During her second visit, Danny had a meltdown. He'd been doing so well with emotional regulation, but the stress had eroded his progress. As I calmed him using the techniques his therapist had taught us, I saw Dr. Min writing furiously. This must be very difficult for you, she said after Danny had settled. I couldn't read her tone. Was it sympathy or judgment? That weekend, my ex escalated again. Despite the restraining order, he showed up at Danny's swimming lesson, not close enough to violate the order technically, but visible from the pool. Danny saw him and panicked, nearly drowning before the instructor pulled him out. I confronted my ex in the parking lot, Danny safe in the car. You could have called him. I just wanted to see my son swim. Is that a crime? When you have a restraining order? Yes. He smiled coldly. Prove I was here for him. This is a public pool. I'm allowed to swim. The police came but said the same thing. Without proof he was there specifically for Danny, they couldn't arrest him. The restraining order specified a distance, and technically he'd maintained it. That night, Danny refused to go to bed. He's going to come, he kept saying. He's going to come. I held him until he finally fell asleep, then spent hours researching stronger protection orders, security systems, anything to keep us safe. The next blow came from an unexpected source. Danny's beloved speech therapist, who'd worked with him for 2 years, suddenly announced she could no longer see him. When I pressed for reasons, she reluctantly admitted she'd been receiving threatening calls about her license. Someone was claiming she was enabling child abuse by supporting me. I'm so sorry, she said, tears in her eyes. I can't risk my career. I have my own family to think about. I understood, but it devastated Danny. He'd made such progress with her, and now we had to start over with someone new. The waitlist for another therapist was months long. My support system was crumbling. Friends distanced themselves, not wanting to get involved in the drama. Danny's playdate invitations dried up as parents heard the rumors. We were becoming isolated, exactly what my ex wanted. Then came the night that changed everything. I woke at 3 a.m. to the sound of breaking glass. Someone was in the house. I grabbed Danny and locked us in the bathroom, calling 911. The police arrived to find a brick through our living room window with a note. Stop keeping him from his father. They dusted for fingerprints but found nothing useful. The officer taking my statement seemed sympathetic but tired. Ma'am, have you considered maybe working out a custody arrangement? These situations tend to escalate when parents can't communicate. I wanted to scream that I'd tried communicating, that my ex was the one escalating, but I just nodded numbly. Danny didn't speak for 2 days after that. The trauma of the break-in had stolen his words again. I watched 3 years of speech therapy progress vanish overnight. Dr. Min made her final visit during this silent period. She observed Danny's muteness with interest, asking probing questions about his regression patterns. I explained about the break-in, the stress, but she seemed more focused on my inability to shield him from adult conflicts. Her report was due in a week. I knew it would determine our future, and I had no idea which way it would go. In desperation, I reached out to a support group for parents of children with Down syndrome. They welcomed us warmly, and for the first time in months, Danny smiled at their meeting. He connected with another boy, Jamie, who also had Down syndrome. Watching them play together, I saw a glimpse of the happy child he'd been before this nightmare started. One of the mothers, Alexandra, pulled me aside. I've been following your story on social media. What they're doing to you is criminal. Tell that to the judge, I said bitterly. Actually, I might be able to help. My brother is a family law attorney who specializes in cases involving special needs children. He's seen this pattern before. She gave me his number. Then Undra was everything my current lawyer wasn't. Aggressive, experienced with custody battles involving disabled children, and furious about my ex's tactics. This isn't about Danny, he said after reviewing my case. This is about control and money. Your ex doesn't want custody. He wants to break you. He was right. I'd been so focused on protecting Danny that I'd missed the bigger picture. My ex wasn't trying to be a father. He was trying to destroy the life we'd built without him, then immediately filed motions addressing the harassment, the false reports, and the violation of the restraining order at the pool. He also subpoenaed my ex's financial records, suspecting he was being funded by his family for this campaign. The court date arrived faster than expected. I sat in the courtroom, Danny with a trusted babysitter from the support group, as Thon systematically dismantled my ex's case. He presented evidence of the coordinated harassment, the false CPS reports, the impersonation to cancel therapy appointments. He showed how each incident coincided with Danny's developmental milestones, proving a pattern of sabotage. Then came the bombshell. Than had discovered my ex had taken out a life insurance policy on Danny shortly before the accident that started this whole ordeal. The beneficiary? Not me, but my ex. Your Honor, Than said, this man doesn't want custody. He wants control. And failing that, he wants to benefit from his son's potential misfortune. My ex's lawyer objected furiously, but the damage was done. The judge ordered a recess, during which my ex's family had a heated discussion with his legal team. When we reconvened, Dr. Min presented her report. My heart pounded as she began speaking. In my professional opinion, she said, Danny is a child under extreme stress due to ongoing parental conflict. However, it's clear that his primary attachment is to his mother, and that she has been his consistent caregiver throughout his life. She detailed Danny's progress under my care, his regression during the harassment campaign, and her observations of our bond. Her recommendation was continued sole custody with me, with a strong suggestion that the father's interference was detrimental to Danny's well-being. The judge's decision was swift. The restraining order was not only upheld, but strengthened. My ex was ordered to pay damages for the harassment campaign and to undergo psychological evaluation before any future custody petitions would be considered. As we left the courthouse, my ex's mother approached. I tensed, ready for another confrontation. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I didn't know. He told us. He lied about everything. I didn't respond. Her apology couldn't undo months of terror. That night, I told Danny the good news in simple terms. The judge said we can stay together. No one's taking you away. He smiled for the first time in weeks. Good team? He asked. The best team, I confirmed. But even as we celebrated, I knew this wasn't over. My ex had lost in court, but men like him didn't accept defeat easily. The restraining order was just paper. The real work of rebuilding our lives and Danny's confidence was just beginning. I enrolled us in trauma therapy, both individual and together. Danny needed to process what had happened, and I needed to learn how to help him feel safe again. The therapist specialized in children with developmental disabilities who'd experienced trauma. Slowly, painfully, we began to heal. Danny's words came back gradually. His anxiety decreased. He started swimming again, though always checking first that his father wasn't there. 3 months after the court decision, I received one last email from my ex. It bypassed my block somehow, appearing in my inbox like a final poison dart. You may have won this round, it read, but I'll never stop fighting for my son. He deserves better than you. I forwarded it to Thon and the police, then deleted it. His words had no power over me anymore. I knew the truth. Danny didn't deserve better than me. He deserved better than a father who saw him as property to be won, rather than a person to be loved. That night, as I watched Danny carefully arrange his toys in the exact order he preferred, I marveled at how far we'd come, not just from the harassment, but from those early days when I thought I couldn't do this. Mommy, Danny said, looking up from his toys. I'm happy. Me too, baby. Me too. And for the first time in months, I truly meant it. We'd survived the worst thing my ex could throw at us. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. After all, we were the best team. The morning after sending Than the email, I woke to Danny standing by my bed, his face pale. Mommy, there's a man outside. I bolted upright, rushing to the window. A sedan sat across the street, engine running. Through the tinted windows, I could make out a figure watching our house. My hands fumbled for my phone as I dialed 911. The operator took my information calmly, but by the time the patrol car arrived 20 minutes later, the sedan had vanished. The officer took notes but seemed skeptical. Could have been anyone, ma'am. Maybe someone lost, checking directions. I bit back my frustration. The surveillance was starting again, more subtle this time. That afternoon, Danny's new speech therapist called to confirm our appointment. When we arrived, the receptionist looked confused. I'm sorry, but we have you down for next Tuesday, not today. I showed her the confirmation text on my phone. She frowned, checking her computer again. That's strange. Our system shows you rescheduled yesterday. My blood chilled. Someone was still accessing our appointments, still trying to disrupt Danny's care. I managed to get him seen anyway, but the therapist was rushed, squeezing us between other clients. On the drive home, Danny was quiet. Too quiet. At a red light, I glanced back to see tears streaming down his face. What's wrong, sweetheart? He shook his head, unable to find words. The regression was starting again. That evening, while preparing dinner, my phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. You think you're so clever? My ex's voice was different, harder, getting that lawyer, making me look like a monster. But I know things about you, things that would interest a judge. This call is being recorded, I said steadily. You're violating the restraining order. Prove it's me. Could be anyone's voice. Anyone who cares about a little boy being kept from his father. The line went dead. I immediately called Thon, who advised me to document everything and vary our routines. We started taking different routes to school, shopping at different stores, anything to be less predictable. 3 days later, I discovered our mail had been redirected. Important bills, Danny's medical statements, even a check from my freelance work, all sent to an address I didn't recognize. The postal worker who helped me fix it mentioned someone had filed the change of address form online using my forged signature. The financial harassment intensified. My car insurance was mysteriously canceled. Our health insurance claimed I'd requested plan changes that made Danny's therapies uncovered. Each fix required hours on the phone, documentation, proof of identity, time I should have been spending with Danny. He watched me during these calls, anxiety written across his face. His vocabulary, which had been expanding beautifully, shrank to basic words. His teacher sent home concerned notes about his participation dropping. One Thursday, I arrived at school pickup to find Danny wasn't there. The teacher looked puzzled. His uncle picked him up. He's on the authorized list, showed ID and everything. My heart stopped. What uncle? Danny doesn't have any uncles on the pickup list. Panic consumed me as the school went into lockdown. Security footage showed Benji at the front desk, somehow added to our authorized pickup list that morning. The principal called the police while I frantically dialed Benji's number. Relax, he answered casually. We're just getting ice cream. Danny wanted to spend time with family. Bring him back now, or I'm pressing kidnapping charges. Kidnapping? I'm his uncle. Check your school forms. 20 agonizing minutes later, Benji's car pulled up. Danny rushed out, ice cream staining his shirt, tears in in his eyes. He clung to me, whole body shaking. He said Dad was waiting, Danny whispered, but Dad wasn't there. The police took statements, but Benji insisted it was a misunderstanding. Someone had indeed added him to the pickup list using the school's parent portal with my password that I'd never shared, then filed emergency motions that night. This had escalated beyond harassment into child endangerment, but court dates moved slowly, and we had to keep living. I changed every password, installed new locks, upgraded our security system, but the damage to Danny was done. He refused to go to school without promises I'd be there exactly at pickup. He started sleeping in my bed again, waking from nightmares about being taken away. The next attack came through official channels. A formal complaint was filed with the medical board about Danny's developmental pediatrician, claiming she was enabling medical neglect by supporting my care decisions. She had to respond to the investigation, taking time away from her practice. Then Danny's occupational therapist received a similar complaint. Then the school counselor. One by one, the professionals supporting us were forced to defend themselves against baseless accusations. Some, like the speech therapist before, decided we weren't worth the risk. "I'm so sorry," Danny's OT said during what would be our last session. "My malpractice insurance is threatening to drop me if I keep seeing patients involved in custody disputes." Danny didn't understand why people kept leaving. He internalized it, believing he'd done something wrong. His progress stalled, then reversed. The confident boy who'd won Most Improved Student was disappearing before my eyes. I found him one afternoon in his closet again, not with his stuffed elephant this time, but with scissors, trying to cut his own hair. "What are you doing?" I asked gently, taking the scissors. "Making myself different," he said, "so Dad won't want me anymore." That night, I held him as he sobbed, his words breaking my heart. "Why does Dad hate me? Is it because I'm slow?" "You're not slow, baby. You're perfect exactly as you are." But my reassurances felt hollow against the constant evidence that his father would stop at nothing to hurt us. The financial warfare escalated. My credit cards were compromised again, this time with thousands in cash advances I hadn't made. The bank's fraud department was sympathetic but slow. Meanwhile, I couldn't afford groceries, had to borrow gas money from neighbors who still talked to us, then work to trace the harassment. But my ex had gotten smarter. He used proxies, fake accounts, hired services. Everything had plausible deniability. Even the kidnapping attempt Benji claimed was just an uncle wanting to treat his nephew. 2 weeks before our next court date, I woke to find our car vandalized. All 4 tires slashed, windows smashed. The security cameras had been spray painted black sometime during the night. Danny saw it through the window before I could stop him. "Is Dad mad at our car too?" he asked. I called the police, filed another report to add to the growing stack. The officer taking photos seemed weary. "Any idea who might have done this?" I explained about my ex, the restraining order, the ongoing harassment. He nodded but said without proof there wasn't much they could do. That afternoon, while waiting for the tow truck, my phone buzzed. A photo message from an unknown number. It was Danny at school, taken from inside the classroom. Again, the principal assured me they'd increased security, but somehow someone was still getting these photos. The message that followed chilled me. "Such a shame about your car. Accidents happen when you're not careful." I pulled Danny out of school for the rest of the week, claiming he was sick. We stayed home, doors locked, security system armed. But isolation wasn't sustainable. Danny needed his routines, his therapies, his education, then advised hiring a private investigator to catch my ex in the act. But that cost money I didn't have after the credit fraud and car repairs. I felt trapped in an impossible situation, watching my son suffer while his father faced no consequences. The breaking point came during a rare moment of normalcy. We'd ventured to the park, Danny finally willing to leave the house. He was on the swings when I noticed a woman filming him with her phone. "Excuse me," I called out. "Why are you recording my son?" She looked startled, then defiant. "Free country, public park." I recognized her then, one of Allie's friends from social media. She was gathering more evidence for their campaign. I told her to stop, but she kept filming, focusing on Danny's features, the way he played differently from other children. "Please," I said, voice breaking. "He's just a little boy." "A little boy being kept from his father," she shot back. Danny noticed the confrontation and came running, upset by the tension. The woman filmed his distress too, probably planning to edit it into something damaging. We left immediately, Danny crying in the backseat about the mean lady. Another safe space ruined, another normal activity stolen from us. That night, Thon called with news. He'd found something in the financial records. My ex had been receiving regular transfers from his mother's account, labeled as loans, but clearly funding his campaign against us. More importantly, he'd discovered my ex had lied about his injury's severity to his insurance company, collecting disability payments while simultaneously working under the table. "This is insurance fraud," Thon said. "We can use this." Finally, leverage. Thon prepared the documentation while I tried to maintain normalcy for Danny. But normal was becoming impossible. He'd stopped speaking at school entirely. His teacher recommended evaluation for selective mutism brought on by trauma. The court date arrived with Danny at his worst point since the harassment began. I'd arranged for Alexandra from the support group to watch him, not wanting him anywhere near the courthouse. In the courtroom, Thon presented everything. The harassment, the false reports, the kidnapping attempt, the financial fraud. My ex's lawyer tried to deflect, but the evidence was overwhelming. Then Thon dropped his biggest revelation. The private investigator my ex had hired, Than had tracked him down, convinced him to testify. The man detailed being hired to surveil us, to photograph Danny at school, to gather dirt that could be twisted in court. My ex's face went white as his own investigator testified about being asked to find or create evidence of neglect. The judge's expression hardened with each revelation. When my ex took the stand, his story crumbled. He claimed ignorance about the harassment, but Thon had receipts, phone records, proof of coordination. The insurance fraud was undeniable, documented in his own submissions. "Your Honor," Than concluded, "this man has weaponized the legal system to terrorize a mother and her special needs child. He's committed fraud, violated restraining orders, and endangered a minor, all while claiming to be a concerned father." The judge's ruling was comprehensive. Criminal charges would be filed for the insurance fraud. The restraining order was made permanent, with violation now a felony. My ex was ordered to pay substantial damages and all legal fees. Most importantly, his parental rights were under review, with termination likely. My ex erupted in court, screaming about injustice, about his rights as a father. Security had to restrain him as he lunged toward our table, his mask finally completely off. "You'll pay for this," he shouted as they dragged him out. "Both of you will pay." Outside the courthouse, his mother approached again. This time she was crying. "I enabled this," she said. "I believed him over you. I'm so sorry. I'll testify about the money, about everything." I nodded, too exhausted for words. words. Her testimony would help with the criminal charges, but it couldn't undo the damage. Driving home, I felt strange, empty. We'd won, but Danny was still traumatized, still struggling. The victory felt hollow against the cost. When I picked up Danny from Alexandra's house, he could tell something had changed. Did the judge help? He asked quietly. Yes, baby. Dad can't bother us anymore. He processed this slowly. Forever? Forever. That night, for the first time in months, Danny slept in his own bed. I heard him talking to his stuffed animals, explaining that they were safe now. My heart ached listening to his innocent voice trying to make sense of adult cruelty. The next morning brought unexpected peace. No threatening texts, no surveillance cars, no mysterious cancellations. Danny noticed too, gradually relaxing as days passed without incident. His speech began returning, tentatively at first. We found a new therapy team, professionals who understood trauma-informed care. Danny connected with a new speech therapist who specialized in selective mutism, making slow but steady progress. 6 weeks after the court ruling, we received news that my ex had been arrested for insurance fraud. He faced serious jail time. His family, shamed by the revelations, retreated from our lives entirely. The social media campaign disappeared overnight. Danny started smiling again. Real smiles, not the forced ones he'd been managing. He made a friend at his new therapy group, another boy who understood being different. They played together with the innocent joy I'd feared was lost forever. One afternoon, while drawing at the kitchen table, Danny looked up at me. Mommy, are we still the best team? Always, I said, meaning it completely. He went back to drawing, humming softly. On the paper, 2 figures held hands under a bright sun. No shadows, no threats, just us. We'd survived the worst. Danny was healing, growing, thriving again. My fierce love for this boy I'd never wanted continued to amaze me. We were more than okay. We were home.